Hi everyone, it's Fred again from Notes of a Nomad, video number 339. Every person carries a story. One reason I do these videos is, have you ever wondered how much you really know about your grandparents or even your parents? Not just their names, where they lived, or what they did for a living, I mean their stories. What were they like when they were young? What did they dream about? What were the difficult times in their lives? What mistakes did they make? What did they learn? And what did they wish they had known when they were your age? I suspect most of us surprisingly know little about the people who came before us. And that's actually one of the reasons why I made Notes of a Nomad. I've always thought it was rather strange. We can know our grandparents sometimes, if we're lucky enough, for decades, and yet we know almost nothing about the person they were before we came along. If we were fortunate enough, we knew them as grandma and grandpa. But before they were grandma and grandpa, they were young people with ambitions, fears, friendships, disappointments, adventures, and dreams of their own. They had an entire life, and much of that life may only exist in their memory until one day it doesn't. I've been thinking about this even more since I became a grandfather myself. I now have 7 grandchildren, and I've wondered, how much will they know about me someday? They may know some of the obvious things. They may know where I lived. They may know some of the things I did. They may remember conversations that we had. But what about all those experiences that happened before they were born? What about the things I've learned over time, the people I've met, the mistakes I've made, the things I've changed my mind about, the experience that helped shape the person that they know as Grandpa? That's another reason I continue making these Notes of a Nomad videos. I like the idea that someday, if one of my grandchildren becomes curious about who I was and what I thought about life, there will be something they can discover. And perhaps many years from now, one of their descendants might discover these videos too. They may never have known me, but they might be able to hear my voice and see my face, and perhaps they learn a little about the person who came before them. But this isn't really about just grandparents and parents. It's about all of us because every person carries a story. Your father carries a story. Your brothers and sisters carry stories. Your children carry stories. Your friends carry stories. And so do you. The problem is we don't always ask. And even when we have stories, we don't talk about them. So occasionally, we might talk about, what happened yesterday, what we're doing tomorrow, who's winning the hockey game, what needs to be done around the house, etc. But occasionally, perhaps we should stop and ask something different. Tell me about your life. Ask your parents, what were you like when you were my age? What was your first job? Ask a grandparent, what did you dream of becoming when you were young? Ask your brother or sister, what's something that happened in your life that I've never heard about? Ask an older friend, what is something you've learned that you wish you had known when you were young? And don't be afraid to ask about the difficult things. Sometimes the most valuable stories aren't the stories about success. They're stories about failure, about disappointment, about taking the wrong turn, about starting again. Those experiences often contain the wisdom we most need. And here's something else I've learned. Don't just ask for information, ask for stories. There's a difference. Instead of asking, where did you work? Ask, tell me about your first job. Or, what was it like growing up there? Instead of, how did you meet your partner? Ask, tell me about the first time you met grandma or mom. Questions like these can unlock more memories that might otherwise remain hidden. And when someone starts telling you a story, listen. And this requires practice. It's easy to say, listen, but it takes practice. And it is rewarding. One example I learned that I become a better listener was when I was traveling to the Arctic a few years ago, I picked up a hitchhiker, Louis. He was hitchhiker from Toulouse, France. I picked him up in the Yukon. And I asked him about his experience of having started hitchhiking when he was 18 until now he's 32. And I listened. And he said to me when he finally left after a couple hours of me driving him, he said, I've never told anyone about my life as much as I've told you. And I thought, yay, maybe I finally have become a better listener. So don't immediately interrupt to tell your story. Don't rush to give advice. Let them remember. Let them wander a little. And sometimes the most interesting part of a story is the part they didn't originally intend to tell you. And if possible, preserve these stories. Write them down. Take a picture. Record an audio conversation. Make a video. It doesn't have to be professionally produced, it just has to exist because memory is fragile. And eventually, every storyteller reaches the point where they can no longer remember to tell the story as it happened. That's the part I found most fascinating and a little sad. When a person dies, we don't simply lose a person, we lose an entire collection of experiences that existed nowhere else. So perhaps we should think differently about the people around us. The elderly person sitting across the table isn't simply an elderly person. They are somebody who's lived through decades that you haven't. A quiet family member may have a fascinating story. The person you think you know very well may have experiences you've never heard about. And you may discover that people closest to you are much more interesting than you ever imagined. Every person carries a story, and one day that story will be gone. So perhaps the best thing we can do is ask and then listen. Because sometimes the greatest stories in our lives aren't found in books or on television, they're sitting right beside us. We just have to ask them to tell us. So let's discover the stories about the people we love and do that while we still have time to discover. So every life has a story worth remembering. So with that, I'll say adios, au revoir, wishing you, your family and friends, lots of love and laughter and lots of stories. So bye for now from Fred and Notes of a Nomad. Until next time.